Heaven Official's Blessing. Chapter 185. Audio source: WuXiaWorldAudiobook.com. 33 heavenly officials fight over auspicious land. Xie Lian asked, "Is this your grave? Am I drinking your wine?" He was a drunken mess and didn't really hear clearly if that ghost fire said anything, and had thought the master of the grave was displeased, trying to chase him away. He grumbled, "I get it. I'll go." Xie Lian hugged the wine jar and crawled up, swaying and wobbly as he took his steps. Yet unexpectedly, he didn't go very far before he lost his footing and thud. He fell all over himself. Turns out, there was a giant pit in this graveyard. It was probably pre-dug to prepare the burial of a deceased, though the deceased hasn't yet been buried before Xie Lian himself came lying in. Xie Lian's forehead knocked on the outer edges of the pit and it hurt, worsening his dizziness, his head throbbing. He was woozy for a while before he struggled to get up, both his hands muddied and bloodied with scrapes and cuts somewhere. He held out his hands and looked at them without really registering anything, then tried to climb out of the pit. However, he had just downed an entire jar of wine, his limbs were limp, he couldn't exert any power, so while he attempted to climb out a few times, he'd slip down every time. Xie Lian fell back to the bottom of the pit and glared at the moon-covered cloudy night sky for a bit, growing very angry. This pit wasn't even that deep, so why couldn't he climb out no matter how he tried? The more he thought, the angrier he became, and he started mumbling in spite of himself. What the fuck? Xie Lian had never cursed before. This was the very first time such words came out of his mouth. But the curious thing was, after he cursed, the stifling tension in his chest seemed to have dispersed instantly. Thus, like a child who had tasted sweets, Xie Lian clung onto the side walls of the burial pit and used all his strength to yell with a deafening voice. "God fucking damn it." He slapped at the ground and yelled, "Is anyone there? Is there anyone who can help pull me out?" Of course there wasn't anyone. There was only a small ball of haunting ghost fire, blazing unceasingly. After Xie Lian had fallen, that ball of ghost fire came rushing over, seeming to have wanted to grab him, but it could never make contact. Xie Lian didn't bother with it at all and said angrily, "Someone might as well just come and bury me." Cursing as he would, he still continued to climb. CRSSH. Xie Lian finally climbed out using his own powers, but was already incredibly unkempt and he laid on the ground huffing, breathing laboriously. It took a brief moment before he flipped over, hugging himself and curled up. "So cold," Xie Lian whispered. His voice was tiny, afraid that anyone would overhear. However, that ghost fire heard, and it came flying, pressing itself against his body, its flames suddenly much brighter than before, like it was burning itself up with all it had. Still, a ghost fire was cold. No matter how close it pressed, no matter how it could burn itself to ashes, it would still not be able to bring a sliver of warmth to the living. In his daze, Xie Lian seemed to have heard a tiny, feeble voice. That voice seemed so close yet far, like it was a dream but not, and it cried in despair. "God, please wait for me, just wait for me. Please give me a little more time. Let me. Xie Lian wondered inwardly, God? Is it calling for me? But even if it was praying to him, it'd be pointless, since even when he was a god he couldn't do anything. Now that he wasn't a god, there was even less he could do. "Your Highness. Your Highness. Your Highness." It was Function's pushing that woke Xie Lian up. He blinked open his eyes laboriously and found he was lying in a small alleyway. Function's face was hanging from above, and when he noticed Xie Lian was awake, he finally let out a breath of relief, but soon after it was replaced with traces of anger. "Your Highness. What's going on with you? Running off on your own for days without a word. If you don't come back soon, I won't be able to keep lying to their majesties any longer." Xie Lian slowly sat himself up. Days. When the word left his lips, he found his throat was dried, his voice hoarse, and his temple was throbbing, his head aching like it was going to split. He seemed to recall something, but at the same time couldn't exactly remember. Feng Xin crouched down by his side. That's right. 2 days. Just where did you go? Why were you running mad like that just now? Was he drunk for 2 days? Wasn't he at some wild graveyard? Why was he lying here? And judging from Feng Xin's tone, a sense of foreboding filled Xie Lian. What did I do? Feng Xin said gruffly. You were possessed. Crashing stalls everywhere, beating people up. You even went up to stop the patrolling Young and soldiers. I don't know what else you've done before that. When Xie Lian heard he even went to stop Young and soldiers, he was taken aback. I went to stop the soldiers. Then, what happened to those soldiers? Thank goodness I bumped into you and stopped you, Feng Xin replied. And you look like this, so they thought you must be some crazy drunkard and only yelled at you but didn't bother, otherwise you'd be dead for sure. Just what happened to you? Why does it look like you drink? Xie Lian looked down at himself and he was covered from head to toe with mud and grime. He scratched his head, and it was also messy like a criminal who is about to be dragged down to be interrogated and executed. He certainly did appear very much like a crazy drunkard who slept on the streets all day. After a moment of silence, Xie Lian crawled to his feet and replied vaguely. I drink a bit. Feng Xin couldn't wrap his head around this. Huh? How can you drink? Just how much did you drink to be drunk for 2 days? Seeing Feng Xin's look of disbelief, Xie Lian was irritated for no good reason and he walked on. I already said I didn't drink much, just a bit. Nothing's up. Why can't I drink? Feng Xin hadn't expected him to answer like this and was stunned for a moment. Then he chased after him. What do you mean, nothing's up? Why, has your highness forgotten? Drinking breaks the mandate. You can't break any mandates, otherwise how can you cultivate? You have to ascend again. The moment he heard cultivation and ascension, Xie Lian didn't want to listen anymore and he quickened his pace. Feng Xin called out, Your Highness. He caught up again and after a moment's hesitation, he tried. Did something happen? Tell me? Hearing Feng Xin question so carefully, Xie Lian opened and closed his mouth, wanting to speak but couldn't. If he didn't tell anyone soon he might just break down, but he also wasn't sure how Feng Xin would react if he told him. He didn't dare to gamble. Seeing him distracted, Feng Xin added, For real, it's not like you killed or robbed, so what can't your highness tell me? Hearing, It's not like you killed or robbed, Xie Lian instantly felt suffocated. If it could be said that he might have been stirred, that he might have felt a little relieved, then at this moment, everything was thoroughly shattered. Xie Lian lowered his head and turned to keep walking, and replied hazily. It's nothing. Just, I'm really tired. He was just about to make up an excuse when suddenly, he noticed something on the side of Feng Xin's cheek and he stopped in his steps. What's with your face? Feng Xin felt his cheek, seemingly to have touched somewhere hurt and his muscles tensed. The thing on his face was a gash. And one of his arms was also wrapped in bandages, layered and tied neatly and attentively. It couldn't have been Feng Xin himself who wrapped those bandages, but what Xie Lian was concerned with were the injuries underneath the dressings. How did you get hurt? By Feng Xin's abilities, no mortals could easily harm him, and it was his arm that was injured too. Feng Xin didn't seem to care. Oh, it's nothing. Just some thugs trying to crash the business, that's all. Xie Lian was shocked and baffled. Those local street performers from the other day. Yes, them, Feng Xin replied. Why did they go crash your show? Xie Lian questioned, but then he understood afterwards. Was it because we admitted defeat that day but then you still went to busk so they came to chase you out? That was pretty much the whole story. After learning the reason, a sudden rage exploded in Xie Lian's chest. Don't go anymore. Xie Lian's voice was hard. However, Feng Xin brushed him off. Who cares about them? I will go whether they like it or not. The one who admitted defeat was you, not me. I didn't admit defeat, so it doesn't count as going back on my word. I'm gonna set up shop there and busk no matter what, and besides crashing the show sneakily, what else can they do to me? I wasn't prepared this time, but I will be next time. If it came to fists, I'm not scared of them. Hearing this, that sudden wave of rage that rushed to Xie Lian's head instantly dissipated, and it was replaced by guilt. Feng Xin had been like this while he himself was depressed and wallowing in misery. How could he possibly face this loyal servant that still hadn't abandoned him when things had reached this point? Having thought this, Xie Lian sighed. I'm sorry, Feng Xin. Feng Xin was taken aback, then waved his hand widely. Why is your highness apologizing to me? What rubbish. You're at earning money all by yourself the past couple of days. Sorry for your trouble, Xie Lian said. As long as you focus on your cultivation and ascend again soon, it'll be worth it. Feng Xin replied. The word ascend came up again, and Xie Lian nodded his head heavily. The king and queen believed Feng Xin's lies and thought Xie Lian had spent the past couple of days out training. When they saw him return, the queen happily cooked a meal as always. Xie Lian didn't have the heart, so he took Feng Xin's bowl over and helped him eat it. He didn't sleep that night. The next day, Feng Xin rose and left bright and early in the morning while Xie Lian remained to cultivate. However, while he already pulled himself together and gathered all of his energy, he still couldn't focus. Everyone should know this logic. The only way to stand out from the crowd was to study hard. Practice makes perfect. But in a million could truly work to the point of practice makes perfect. By that same logic, no matter how much he told himself to clear his mind, how could he possibly achieve it just because he told himself to? For the next 10 consecutive days, the progress of his cultivation was at a standstill. Nothing was achieved, and Xie Lian couldn't help but be anxious. Especially since every night when Feng Xin dragged his exhausted body back, and he and the queen asked if Xie Lian had made any progress, Xie Lian could feel an inexplicable immense pressure. He didn't dare tell the truth, so he could only vaguely answer that yes, there was progress, and so Feng Xin and the queen were both very happy. Still, things couldn't go on like this. After 2 months, Xie Lian could no longer allow things to continue the way they were. One day, when Feng Xin returned in the deep night, the two were eating leftovers from the day before at the table. As they ate, Xie Lian suddenly turned to him. I'm afraid I'll have to leave for a period of time. Feng Xin was taken aback as he stuffed his face with rice. Huh? Leave? Where are you going? Xie Lian said slowly. I'm going to go search for a quiet land filled with spiritual energy and close myself off to cultivate. If a cultivation place was abundant in spiritual energy, then it was significantly beneficial to the cultivator. Before, Xie Lian couldn't make up his mind on whether he should leave his parents and the 2 attendants behind, which was why he never parted. Now, he's changed his mind. Feng Xin didn't think too much on it, however. Great, Your Highness, you should have done this a long time ago. Quiet cultivation is the most effective after all. Xie Lian nodded, paused, then said, I'll have to trouble you to look after father and mother while I'm gone. Feng Xin was about to respond but suddenly hesitated for a moment. Although it was but a flash, but Xie Lian knew him so well, how could he not have noticed that moment of hesitation? Right then, the king bellowed from within the back room, if you must go then go. This king doesn't need anyone to look after. Feng Xin and Xie Lian lowered their bowls and chopsticks and looked to the room. It seemed the king hadn't yet rested, and heard their exchange, interrupting their conversation. Xie Lian shook his head and whispered, acting tough again. Feng Xin smiled then said, Don't worry, Your Highness. Of course I'd look after them. Now he answered so straightforwardly. Still, Xie Lian didn't forget that before Feng Xin answered, there was that small moment of hesitation, like he had other concerns. However, when he thought about it, maybe he saw wrong. Other than them, Feng Xin didn't know anyone else, had no other dependents, so what other concerns could he have? So Xie Lian stopped thinking and changed his mind to considerations for his departure the next day. The next day, Xie Lian carried a simply satchel and temporarily bid farewell to his parents and Feng Xin. He walked for who knows how many tens of miles, eating and sleeping out in the open for days, and finally found a place, a quiet deep mountain that was perfect for quiet cultivation. After examining the area, Xie Lian was startled at first, but soon after, his heart was filled with joy. Such luck! The feng shui of this land is excellent. I've actually found a most auspicious piece of land. Having been unfortunate up to this point, to have his luck turn so suddenly, Xie Lian still couldn't believe it, and had to check and recheck before he was absolutely sure. Indeed, this area was a sacred land brimming with spiritual energy. If he could immerse himself and focus on cultivation for the next few months, then surely he could achieve twice the results with half the effort, and make exponential progress. It was as if Xie Lian had saw hope, and the gloomy feelings of recent days suddenly cleared, his heart leaping with joy. Father, Mother, Feng Xin, wait for me. I'll return very soon. Following along the steep and perilous mountain path and hiking for 7 to 8 hours, Xie Lian finally entered the deep recesses of this spiritual mountain before sunset. Crossing through the dense forests, he could sense clearly that he was coming closer and closer to the source of the spiritual energy. Xie Lian's steps were also growing faster and lighter. Yet unexpectedly, just as he was picking out a location for his quiet cultivation, there suddenly came the clamoring noise of footsteps behind him. How could there be so many feet in such a secluded mountain? Xie Lian looked over unconsciously. He had never expected that with this glance, the smile hanging off his lips would freeze. Behind him appeared a number of people, about maybe 30 of them, all different in shapes and sizes, donned in various attires. However, the one thing they all had in common was they were all heavenly officials. A small number of them were officials without rank in the upper court, and the majority of them were the officials of the lower court. Among them were those junior officials that bumped into his failed robbery the last time. When they saw Xie Lian, their faces changed, and they tugged and elbowed each other, saying something under their breaths. As for Xie Lian, when he saw them, immediately his hands started trembling. Both parties stared at each other. It was a brief moment before one of the heavenly officials cleared his throat. What a coincidence, that we'd run into your Royal Highness here. Indeed. Why has your Royal Highness come here too? Xie Lian inclined his head lightly, forcing himself to be calm and composed, and responded without any sign of inferiority. I'm here to train. Even though the him today wasn't the him of the past, still Xie Lian tried to use the same tone before he was banished, refusing to allow himself to sound subservient or guilty. The heavenly official smiled. Even more of a coincidence. We've come to train too. Yes, who knew that we'd all run into each other here, ho? Turns out, Xie Lian wasn't the only one who spotted this auspicious land. This group of heavenly officials have also targeted it. Having run into this situation, Xie Lian started hesitating. Would he have to cultivate alongside this many heavenly officials? To be honest, he rejected the idea of cultivating with other heavenly officials from the bottom of his heart. First, he had come to close himself off to cultivate quietly. If he couldn't be by himself and had to be with so many people, then there'd no doubt be disturbances. Some people enjoy cultivation in groups so they could take care of one another, but Xie Lian had always cultivated quietly on his own. Second, ever since that robbery incident, he became ill at ease when he saw heavenly officials he had acquainted in the past, feeling like the eyes of the others were piercing like needles, tormenting him. Just like right now, he had the delusional feeling that they were all watching him with judgment, so he wouldn't be able to focus on cultivation at all. Although when it came to taking over auspicious lands, There was a first-come, first-served rule, and as long as Xie Lian was strong enough, he could very well say he was there first. Please go find somewhere else to train. However, those few junior officials who bumped into his robbery incident were right before him, so he couldn't act too tough. Besides, it'd also be thuggish of him to chase away so many heavenly officials while keeping the auspicious land for himself. Even if Xie Lian didn't want to train next to the other heavenly officials, there was no other choice. There wasn't any time to go find another place with such plentiful spiritual energy, so Xie Lian could only nod. Yes, what a coincidence. Then, I'll head in first. My lords, please do as you will. Then, he made a move to leave in haste so he could go hide himself in the quietest cave. Yet unexpectedly, just as he turned around, a heavenly official behind him spoke up. Hold up. Xie Lian paused in his step and turned his head back, puzzled. What is it? Those 30-some heavenly officials exchanged looks with each other, some whispering. A moment later, someone stepped out, and he smiled. Your Highness had taken over a number of auspicious lands in the past. Why don't you let us have this one this time? Xie Lian was stunned for a good while before he understood. What they meant was to have him leave the place by himself. How baffling. What bullies. A rush of blood came charging up to his head. Xie Lian thought angrily, I was here first, but I didn't ask you all to leave, so why did you all turn around to have me leave? But he didn't dare to act out. After a moment of silence, the hand-holding strap of his satchel slowly clutched harder, and Xie Lian demanded, his voice hard. My lords, what is the meaning of this? One of the heavenly officials said. Well, didn't we just say, Your Highness had taken over quite a number of auspicious lands in the past? Xie Lian cut him off. What does that got to do with this? Are you saying that since I've taken a number of spiritual lands in the past, I'm now barred from cultivating in spiritual lands? That heavenly official was stumped and stopped talking, looking embarrassed. Xie Lian tried to remain composed and said, also, I don't quite understand. It's not like everyone can't cultivate here just because I'm here too. Isn't it common to share spiritual lands when cultivating? What's wrong if everyone just mind themselves? Why must you ask me to leave? Just then, he heard someone grumble. Stop playing ignorant. There's already 30-something of us. If you're cultivating here, what more can the others cultivate? Although that man was instantly pushed down by the others, Xie Lian still instantly understood. So that was it. The spiritual energy in piece of auspicious land was very limited. When cultivating, if someone took over half, then the others who came afterwards could only share the other half. If someone took over 8 parts of it, then the other could only take 2. The stronger one's ability to absorb in spiritual energy to use for oneself, the less spiritual energy there'd be for others to use. Those heavenly officials were afraid that if he was also around to cultivate, he'd take away a majority of the spiritual energy. What was left would have to be shared among the 30 of them, so there wouldn't be much left for everyone. Having realized this, that boiling blood in Xie Lian's head was charging even more aggressively. He clenched his fists and said coldly, I will cultivate here. Another heavenly official spoke up. Your Highness, we're only willing to call you Your Highness out of respect. You're nothing more than mortal right now, so why must you fight with us over this spiritual land? Since I'm immortal and you're all heavenly officials, then what are you afraid of if I'm here to train? Xie Lian said, if I don't leave, are you going to chase me away forcefully? Of course that wasn't feasible. If a mortal did not commit any major sins, then heavenly officials were not allowed to use force against him lest they be punished. The heavenly officials really couldn't do anything to him. However, Xie Lian forgot one thing. Just as he was stubbornly facing those 30-some heavenly officials, a voice suddenly said, Your Highness has been banished to the mortal realm. Your backbone's grown much tougher. Not only would you rob mortals, you'd even offend heavenly officials. Ha! Hearing this, it was as if Xie Lian suddenly plunged into an ice cellar. He whipped his head up and saw the one who spoke was an insignificant lower-ranking official, but he wasn't any one of the heavenly officials who caught him red-handed at the robbery incident that day. As he suspected, they already talked. It wasn't all in Xie Lian's head earlier. Everyone really was looking at him with an inexplicable eye. Everyone knew. All of these heavenly officials, they all knew. In an instant, Xie Lian felt as if all of his bones were pulled out, the flames burning in his veins extinguished, his eyes red, filled with blood, and he stiffly looked over to those junior officials. He croaked, "You said you wouldn't tell anyone." End chapter.